I'd like to thank you for all being here tonight in the rainstorm outside. I know it's the NCAA championship tonight, but I really think that you are in for a treat. And yeah, thank you for being here. My name is Danielle Purifoy, and I'm an editor at Scalawag Magazine and a graduate student at Duke University. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's reading by the much acclaimed writer and teacher Kiese Laymon, who will be reading from his forthcoming book entitled Heavy, an American Memoir. So just as some background, I first met Kiese at Vassar College in Poughkeepsie, New York in 2003. I was then a 19-year-old freshman. He was barely a decade older and already a popular English professor who embraced his southern roots in Jackson, Mississippi, as much as I had tried at that point to distance myself from my black southern roots here in Durham. After taking the first of 4 creative writing courses with him, that distance quickly shrank. Kiese taught me that, in the words of Andre 3000, the South got something to say. I could say a lot more, but suffice it to say now, 14 years later, that I wouldn't be back here in Durham writing about black southern spaces and editing a magazine devoted to reckoning with the South if it were not for Kiese's guidance and enthusiastic support, which extended long past my time at Vassar. I'm so proud to say that I knew him when. Since that time, Kiese has expanded from a popular English professor to a celebrated novelist and essayist. I recall vividly reading early drafts in class from his first novel, Long Division, which was named one of the best of 2013 by BuzzFeed, The Believer, Salon, Guernica, Contemporary Literature, Mosaic Magazine, Library Journal, Chicago Tribune, and the Crunk Feminist Collective. And it also won the 2014 Soroyan International Writing Award. 3 essays from his second book, How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America, have been included in the Best American series. It received the Best of the Net Award and the Atlantic's Best Essays of 2013. He was selected as a member of the Root 100 in 2013 and 2014, and Ebony Magazine Power 100 in 2015. Both of these books will be available for purchase after the reading tonight. And you can also read his work in places ranging from Oxford American and Ebony to ESPN and most recently McSweeney's. Heavy, an American Memoir, is one of 2 of his books forthcoming this year and in 2018. The second is a novel entitled And So On. And Kiese is currently a professor of English and creative writing at the University of Mississippi. Tonight's post-reading discussion will be moderated by another celebrated writer and professor, Dr. Mark Anthony Neal, professor of African and African American Studies at Duke University, and author of several books, including Soul Babies, Black Popular Culture and the Soul Aesthetic, and New Black Man, and he's also the host of the web series Left of Black. Finally, I want to be sure to thank our sponsors for bringing us together tonight. This event is the first in a partnership between Scalawag Magazine, which is headquartered right here in Durham, and the Duke University Forum for Scholars and Publics. Our aim in this partnership is to generate critical conversations about the South in spaces both inside and outside the university. Special thanks to Lou Brown, the Director of Programs of the Forum for Scholars and Publics, for her generosity, patience, and support. And for their generous support, we also thank the John Hope Franklin Humanities Institute at Duke University, the Thompson Writing Program at Duke, and the Duke Language, Arts, and Media Program. Last, but certainly not least, we thank the team here at Hayti Heritage Center for opening their space to us, for their flexibility, and for their continued excellence in supporting community programming in Durham. And now we're ready to begin. Please join me in welcoming Kiese Laymon.
Thank you so much. All right. We good, right? Yes? Okay. First of all, North Carolina. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I had to come on the night of the championship. I picked Kansas and Duke. So either way, I was gonna be messed up. I just wanna say, thank Hey Ty for allowing us to come into this space. This is an amazing space. I've been lucky enough to travel around the country talking the past 4 or 5 years, and I've never been in a space that felt so much like home. So I wanna thank Hey Ty for making this possible. I wanna thank Danielle. That was amazingly, yeah, I could get really sentimental very quickly talking about Danielle, but I'll just say that one of the most wonderful things about being a teacher is that every now and then you meet students who really want to be taught. And I think ironically, those students end up teaching me the most. And with Danielle, I mean, I kind of feel like she came to me fully formed. You know, like she loved Black people, I think. I think she loved the South. And she could write her ass off. And I remember reading one of her stories, and then I remember thinking like, damn, she like 18. I'm trying to do this for a living. I don't know, like one of us, it didn't make sense to me, the talent you had. And then I saw her tap dance, and I was like, oh my gosh, she can tap, you know? Seriously, she was doing everything. So the wonderful thing also about, I think, meeting someone at the beginning of their career, when I was at the beginning of my career, is that we can share struggle stories. So, I was struggling back then in a lot of ways. And maybe Danielle was too, but I don't know. I know I was. So I just want to thank you for allowing me to teach you, and thank you for teaching me so much. I also want to thank Mark Anthony Neal, someone who I feel like has spent my lifetime teaching me, though I never shared a classroom with him. I think there are very few people in this world, much less in academia, who model a kind of generosity and genius. Folks that I know who tend to be geniuses tend to not be super generous. And Mark Anthony Neal has just modeled that in ways big and small for folks like me coming up, and literally gave me something to aspire to be. So I'm shook that I'm sharing the stage with him tonight, but I'm gonna try to act like I've been here before. So I just wanna say thank you for talking to me. Thank you for talking to me. And I also wanna thank Scalawag for, I think, pushing the tradition of Southern literary excellence and Southern reckoning. We don't have enough magazines that I think are actually looking to find a lot of folk in this country, particularly in this region, who are doing this soul-saving, earth-saving, region-saving work. And I think y'all are doing it, and it seems like you're about to do it even bigger. So thanks, Scalawag, for making this possible too. All right, y'all. Okay, since this is the national championship night, I'm going to read something very short. It is one of the beginning chapters of this new book called Heavy, which should be out in probably November, December. The book is about a lot of things, but it's primarily about my family's relationship to sexual violence, food, racial terror, and language. It's a lot. It's a lot. And in the section I'm about to read, it's near the beginning of the book, and the book is written to my mother. We can talk about that later if we want to. It's not a letter, it's a book written to my mother. So periodically a you will show up, and that you is my mama. All right. I want to thank Mississippi too for raising me. A few weeks into the summer, when counting to 10 and limiting carbs didn't work out for either of us, you put me on a bus and told me that I had to stay with Grandmama in Forest, Mississippi for a few days. I loved Grandmama, but I didn't really love going to her house any day other than Friday. Every Friday, Grandmama let me watch Dukes of Hazzard, a show you said, quote, operates in a world even more racist than the one we live in, where two white convicted drug dealers who keep violating probation and making fools of the police in a red Dodge Charger with the Confederate flag on top called General Lee never go to jail. The Friday night I was sent to stay with Grandmama, I asked her if black folk like us could ever get away from the police, like Bo and Luke, Duke. Hell nah, Grandmama said, before I could get the whole question out. No, nope, not at all, never. You better never try that mess either, Key. The 1 or 2 times there were black characters on Dukes of Hazzard, I remember Grandmama and Ofa D getting closer to the screen and cheering for them the same way they cheered if the Georgetown Hoyas were playing, or if there was a black contestant on Wheel of Fortune, $25,000 Pyramid, or The Price is Right. Like most black women in Forest, Mississippi, my grandmama had a number of side hustles other than her job working the line at the chicken plant. One of her side hustles was selling vegetables from her garden. Another side hustle was selling fried fish, pound cakes, and sweet potato pies every Saturday evening to anyone who would buy them. The most important of Grandmama's side hustles was washing clothes, ironing, cooking, and washing dishes for this white family called the Mumfords. After church on the way to the Mumfords, I complained to Grandmama that my slacks were too tight, so I had to unzip them if I wanted to breathe. Grandmama laughed and laughed and laughed until she didn't. She said that she wouldn't be at the Mumfords for long. I always saw the Mumfords' dirty clothes next to Grandmama's washer and their clean clothes out on the clothesline behind the house. I hated those clothes. The Mumfords lived right off of Highway 35. I was amazed at how the houses off of Highway 35 were the only houses in Forest that looked like the houses on Leave It to Beaver, or even What's Happening. When I imagined the insides of rich white folks' houses, I imagined stealing all their food while they were asleep. I wanted to gobble up handfuls of their Crunching Munch and fill up their 32-ounce glasses with name brand ginger ale and crushed ice that came from their silver refrigerators. Then I wanted to leave the empty glass and Crunching Munch crumbs on the counter so the white folk would have something to clean up when I left. Grandmama left the key in the ignition and told me she'd be back in 20 minutes. Don't say none of that badass Mumford boy if he come out here, Key, she said. He ain't got a lick of home training. You hear me? And don't get out this car unless it's an emergency. I nodded yes and sprawled out across the front seat of the Impala. Damn near as soon as she went in the house, out came this boy who looked like a 9-year-old Mike D from the Beastie Boys. The Mumford boy was bone white and skinny in a way that Grandmama called Po. Grandmama didn't have much money, and her 600 square foot shotgun house was clean as could be in the inside, but raggedy as a roach on the outside. I always wondered why Grandmama never called us or people with less than her po or poor. She called those kind of people folk who ain't got a pot to piss in, or folk whose money ain't all the way right, or folk with nan dime to their name, but she never used poor or po to talk about anything other than people's bodies. Without knocking, this po white boy opened the door of the driver's side of Grandmama's car. You Reno grandson? He asked me. Who is Reno? Reno, he said, the black lady who cleaned my house. I'd never seen this po white Mumford boy before, but I'd seen the shiny gray swim trunks, the long striped socks, and the gray Luke Skywalker shirt he had in our dirty clothes basket or hanging on our clothesline. I didn't like how knowing a po white boy's clothes before I knew a po white boy made me feel. And I hated that this po white boy called Grandmama Reno, that black lady who cleaned my house. I got out of the Impala and kept my hands in my pocket. So you Reno's grandson? You the one from Jackson? Before I could say yes, the Mumford boy told me we couldn't come in his house, but we could play in his backyard. The phrase, I'm good, was something you and I always said in Jackson, but I didn't know that I'd ever meant it as much as I meant it today. That's what I felt before I looked at the size of the Mumford's garage and saw a closet door open in the left corner. I walked toward the room and saw a dryer, a washer, and a scale on the floor. What y'all call this room? I asked him. That's our washroom, he said. Y'all still shoot folks in Jackson? A washroom, I asked and tried to ignore his question. I'd never seen a house in Jackson with an actual separate room for washing and drying clothes. Not even Annie Blackman's house had a washroom. At Grandmama's house, our washer was in the dining room and we didn't even have a dryer, so we hung everything on the clothesline. Wait, what's the scale doing up in here? My papa, he liked to weigh himself, he said. That washer over there, do it work? It worked fine, he said. Good as new. And the dryer too? I looked at the 2 irons on the shelf hanging above an ironing board. I didn't know how to say what I wanted to say. I stepped on the scale in the corner. This scale is right. I don't know, he said. I ain't never used it. I told you, this is my pawpaw scale. I walked back to Grandmama's Impala, got in the driver's seat and locked the doors. I remember gripping the steering wheel and wondering just how fat 218 pounds was for 11 years old. Less than a minute after I opened the car, the Mumford boy came back. Without knocking, he tried to open the Impala driver's side door again. Come on in and play, Jackson, he said from outside the Impala. You just gotta take your shoes off and come in through the back. No, I'm good. I rolled the window down and told him. You won't shoot my BB gun in my backyard? Nah, my mama don't let me shoot guns. I'm good. Fat ass nigga, the Mumford boy said. All y'all do is shoot guns in Jackson. I sat in Grandmama's Impala with a rot spreading in my chest for a few seconds before sprinting out of the car after that poor Mumford boy. Grandmama walked out of the house with a clothes basket of clothes in one hand and an envelope in the other as I got close to him. When I told Grandmama what the Mumford boy said, she dropped the basket, grabbed me by my arm, and told me to get my black ass in that car and leave these folks alone. Don't you know who you messing with? She asked me. These folks liable to have us locked up under the jail key. From the doorway of his house, the Mumford boy looked again. Yeah, I said it, he said, this time from in front of my grandmama and me. I kept looking at Grandmama as we drove home. I was trying to decide if I should ask her why she had to wash, dry, iron, fold the Mumford's dirty clothes if the Mumfords already had a better washer than ours and a working dryer, plus a new iron and ironing board. I wanted to ask her if there were better side hustles than washing nasty white folk clothes on the weekend, but I didn't say anything on the first half of the way home. I just looked at her face and saw deeper frown lines that I'd ever seen before. I understood that day why you and Grandmama were so hungry for black wins against white folk, regardless of how tiny those wins seemed to me. For Grandmama, those wins were always personal. For you, those wins were always political. Both of y'all knew and tried to teach me that we didn't even have to win for them to punish us. All we had to do was not lose the way they wanted us to. I kept wishing I would have gone into Mumford's house and stolen something they couldn't do without. Stealing something that white folk valued felt like the only way to make this rotten feeling in my chest go away. Before going home, Grandmama took the money she'd gotten from the Mumfords out of her bosom. She placed it in an envelope, wrote your name and address on it, and put it in a mailbox downtown. Grandmama, I said as we turned down Old Morton Road, do those white folk know that your name is Catherine, or do they think your name is Reno? I don't know if they know my name or not, Grandmama said. I know my name, and I know how much the white folk pay me every week. Well, do you tell Mumfords the truth when you in their house? No, she said, I sure don't. Then what you tell them? I tell them whatever it take to keep my job, she said. Whatever it take to get their little money and take care of my family. But do you ever want to steal anything? Nah, kid, she said. They test me like that all the time, and I love you and me too much to take anything that ain't mine. If I ever stole from them folk, we wouldn't have nothing. You hear me? Nothing. So don't you steal from no white folk. I'm telling you what I know. Do not steal nothing from no white folk ever. When we pulled into our yard, Grandmama told me to grab the clothes basket of dirty clothes and put it next to the washer. I picked the clothes up, and instead of stopping at the washer, I walked into the kitchen, placed the dirty clothes on the floor in between the fridge and the oven. I looked around to see if Grandmama was coming before stepping both of my penny loafers deep in the Mumford's basket and doing quick feet like we had to do at the beginning of basketball practice. I got your nigga right here, nigga, I said, stomping my feet all up in their clothes as fast as I can. Y'all don't even know. I got your nigga right here, nigga. I was doing quick feet in the Mumford's clothes for a good 30 seconds when Grandmama came out of nowhere, tearing me up. Get your tail out them white folk clothes, Grandmama said, while whipping my legs with a pleather blue belt. But the licks didn't stop me. I was still doing quick feet like it was going out of style Boy, get out my kitchen acting like a star-nated fool. After the whipping, I asked Grandmama whether she meant star-nated or stark naked. I told her I'd rather be a star-nated fool because I love stars, even though I didn't think star-nated was a word. Grandmama and I love talking about words. She was better than anyone I'd ever known at bending and breaking and coming up with words that weren't in a dictionary. I asked her what word I could use to make the Mumford boy felt what I felt. Ain't no need to make up words for words that already exist, baby, she said. That ain't nothing but white you saw up in that baby. And you don't want to feel white, do you? I looked at Grandmama and told her that I felt like a nigga, and feeling like a nigga made my heart and lungs and kidneys and brains feel like they were melting and dripping out the ends of my toenails. It ain't about making white folk feel what you feel, she said. It's about not feeling what they want you to feel. Do you hear me? Grandmama started laughing. Baby, what you call yourself doing in white folk clothes? Oh, I said, and started doing it again. At practice, we be calling this right here the quick feet drill. You gave them white folks the quick feet? Not feet, I said, laughing. Quick feet. Quick feet, Grandma said again, laughing until she almost fell out of her chair. Quick foots. Grandmama, you so crazy, I told her and sat next to her legs. I hate these white folk clothes. I should also say the name of this chapter is B. I know you do, Grandmama said, and stopped laughing. I don't much appreciate them or their clothes either, but them dirty clothes is how we eat and how your mama and them ate too. Grandmama said she whipped me for acting a fool in her kitchen, not for messing up them folks' clothes. She said she spent so many hours in white folks' kitchen and just wanted her children to respect her kitchen when she got home. I asked Grandmama why she whipped me on my legs when I was doing quick feet and not on my head, on my neck, on my back. Because I didn't want to hurt you, she said. I just want you to act like you got some good sense, Key. Grandmama stood up and told me to follow her out to the garden. We went outside and we picked butter beans and purple whole peas and collard greens and green tomatoes and yellow squash. We sat on the porch holding peas and talking more about quick feet while the train behind the house roared its whistle. My bucket of peas was between my legs when Grandmama stood up and straddled my tub. Key, try it like this here, Grandmama said. I looked up in her hands and how they handled the purple whole peas. When she reached for my face, I jumped back. Baby, I'm not trying to hit you. What you jumping back for? I didn't know what to say. Look at my hands, she said. You ain't got to be flinching. I'm not trying to hurt you. Grandmama took the bucket from between my legs in the kitchen. I sat there looking at my hands. They wouldn't stop shaking. At supper, Grandmama apologized again for whipping my legs and told me that when I wrote my report on the Book of Psalms later that night, I could write the way we quote unquote talk. She'd only told me that one other time. She said that it was okay if I didn't show you what I wrote. Later that evening, I wrote, I know you want me to write about the Book of Psalms, but if it's okay, I just want to tell you about some secrets that make my head hurt. I be eating too much and staying awake at night and fighting people in Jackson. Mama does not like how my eyes are always red. I wake her up in the morning and she be making me use Visine before school. I try, but I can't tell her what's wrong. Can I tell you? Can you help me with my words? The words Mama make me use don't work like they supposed to work. I wrote the words, be kissing me early in the morning, be choking me early Monday mornings, be running the train, be beating my back, be hearing her heartbeat, be slow dancing with me, be rubbing her breast in my mouth, be watching people, be getting beaten, be on top of me, be on my knees, be kissing me early Monday mornings, be choking me early Monday mornings, be kissing him at night, be hitting hard, be saying white folk hit the hardest, be laughing so it won't hurt, be eating when I'm full, be kissing me early Monday mornings, be choking me early Monday mornings. At the end, I wrote, Grandmama, can you please help me with my words? And can you not tell Mama what I wrote? I gave my grandmama my notebook when I was done, like I'd done every Sunday we spent together. Unlike other nights, she didn't say anything about what I'd written. When she walked by me, I didn't even hear her breathing. Later that night before bed, Grandmama got on her knees, turned the light off, and told me that she loved me. She told me that tomorrow would be a better day. Before both of us went to sleep, I asked Grandmama if 218 pounds was too fat for 11 years old. What you weighing yourself for anyway? She asked me. 218 pounds, that sounds just right to me, Key. I think it's just heavy enough. But can I ask you one more question before you go to bed? Yes, baby, she said, and faced me for the first time since I gave her the notebook. What you think about counting to 10 in case of emergencies? Ain't no emergency that God can't help you forget, Grandmama told me. All we can do is pray and try to avoid what we need to avoid. But what about the sad stuff that folks do who love you? What about the stuff they do? What about the stuff they make you feel? What are we supposed to do with that? I asked her. You forget it, she said, or you go stone cold crazy. My whole life, it seemed like something crazy always happened on Sundays in the summer, Grandmama said. My whole life had been this way, Key. Be still with the good things you got, like them quick foots. Quick feet, Grandmama, I told her. Quick feet. Whatever, Grandmama said. It made me pray again that night. I kept thinking about rooms and sound. I prayed for you to never close the door to your room if Isaiah Horde was there. I prayed for Noel and Dougie to never feel like they had to go back to Daryl's room. I prayed for both of us if we were ever locked in your room again. I prayed that they didn't feel that neither of us felt like dying. I prayed for Grandmama to have more money so she wouldn't have to stand in a big room and take the bloody guts out of chicken during the week before standing in a smaller room with shitty underwear white folk who called her out her name on the weekends. When I got on my knees, I wanted Grandmama to tell me everything would be okay. I wanted her to tell me that her body would be there with my body through all our emergencies. I wanted Grandmama to tell me some of the stories her body told her, stories she ran away from telling anyone else. I waited next to Grandmama for hours that night, hoping she'd tell me those stories. And when I finally put my finger on the small of her back, she jumped and clenched the covers tight around her body. But my grandmama didn't say a word. Her 61-year-old body, the same one that won and lost so many battles with white folk and trifling men, was trying as best as it could to forget the words, weight, and memory of way more Sundays than I could ever imagine. And my 11-year-old body, all 218 pounds of it, was trying to decide what memory really meant in a world where forgetting late Sunday nights and early Monday mornings was supposed to feel like a win. So that's the end of that chapter. Whew. And I just want to say thank y'all again for coming out. I haven't read this out loud before, so I'm gonna get better at it. But it's kind of tough to read out loud, so I'm not sure what I'm gonna do in the future. But anyway, thank y'all for listening to that. I'm sure it made you uncomfortable, but hey,
Thank you.
thank you. Ooh.
What's up, man?
Hey.
I asked you about how you were feeling about the book when you first came in, and your very quick, simple response was scary.
Yeah.
Scary for the readers, scary for you.
I actually feel scary for my family about the book. This book, unlike, I wrote this book called How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others, which is a book of essays. And with that book, you know, I tend to show my family early drafts of my work to see what their memories are, to ultimately see if they're okay with me publishing. And sometimes I do what they say, sometimes I don't. In a novel I wrote called Long Division, I had conversations with my family, but you know, I didn't do reporting. But with this book, I talked to my grandmother and my mother and my aunt Sue and Linda about some things I remembered around food, terror, and sexual violence, and asked them to help remember some things they didn't want to talk about. And so I wrote the book after like compiling hours and hours and hours of stuff, and I tried to dramatize it in a way that the reader could enter. So, talking about some of the violent things that my family has experienced sexually, and some of the violent things I experienced sexually. And I think some of the emotionally violent things I've done is scary, and I'm just really scared for my family. Thank you. That's a long answer, man, but yeah. Scared for my family. And actually, what that really means is I'm scared for myself. Scared for myself.
There's always been a kind of vulnerability about your writing, whether that's been in your published essays, in your books. To those of you who have the pleasure of following KSA on Facebook, that vulnerability is very public in that regard. What do you attest your willingness to share your vulnerabilities, particularly in ways in which Black masculinity is constructed, where you get very rare glimpses of vulnerability expressed, particularly from Black men? Mm-hmm. Where do you find your inspiration or even fortitude to be comfortable sharing your vulnerabilities?
I went to a high school today. What was the name of the high school? Jordan High School today, and I was talking to 3 periods of seniors and juniors, and they asked a question that was sort of like that, and the roundabout answer is just, my mother made me write my entire life. She made me write before I could turn on the lights. She made me write before I could play any sport, and after a while, I started to allow writing to work for me, meaning that this book is also about mining all these journals and stuff that they weren't journals. My mother would tell me to write essays about Fannie Lou Hamer or something, and I'd go and I'd write something like that, or I'd write something like Long Division. So my mother just always made me go in these private spaces and write, and so writing became a way that I reckoned, and Facebook, that little rectangle sometimes is a way that I keep myself honest. And I think it's really important that one time I was being a little too reckless on Facebook, and we had a conversation. Yeah, you reached out to me. You were like, "Brother, you're showing a little bit too much of your work," and I appreciate that. So you and 1 or 2 other people, I think, pull me in sometimes when I'm exposing a little bit too much, and really sometimes just trying to stunt on people. Like, I think Facebook is perfect for stunting, and I mean, writers and artists, like, we all get our fuel from like imaginary haters, and I had a lot of haters at my old school, real and fake, and I knew that they were my Facebook friends, but I knew they would be watching, so I'm like, oh, you gonna feel this, I'm typing that shit out, and it's all good until the dean calls you into the office for your Facebook post, which would happen to me. So,
what I had said to KSA was that, and I'm wondering how he even thinks about this now, because this is a few years ago. But what I said, he's on a bunch of short lists. He don't know what those lists are. Ain't nobody told him what those lists are. Those lists got names like Pulitzer, MacArthur, and shit like that. And I just wanted him to be aware that folks find his voice compelling and important, defining in this kind of moment, right? Mm-hmm. So there are folks that, might not be watching that are watching.
Right.
And that was just, a little gesture for you to think about how important your voice was. This is the first time we've ever physically met. Right. But we were brought together in a collective of voices. Yes. Michael Denzel Smith, Darnell Moore, Marlon Peterson, Kai. And I always appreciated that relationship because I was the old head in the group, right? So y'all brought me into this. And what I got out of just the energy of your friendship, forget about how great y'all were as writers, right, and thinkers, but just the energy that y'all would pull together. We did several joint pieces of writing that we're able to share with the world. How important has it been for you to be able to find fellow travelers? Not only just like in terms of, brothers like us, but I also know, the relationships you forge with folks like Brittany Cooper and so many other Black feminist thinkers. Yes. How important has it been to have that community for you?
It's been crucial for a lot of reasons, but really fundamentally, it's been crucial because as I get older, I just realize like I like a team. You know, like I'm a very mushy-hearted Black boy from Mississippi who loves friends. You know, and
super friends.
So, I mean, that's what I was gonna say. And no matter who my friends are, I always want to believe we're super friends, right? And that's why we play sports a lot coming up, and I play sports in college, and like those are my super friends. And when I became a professional, and I wrote professionally, I just wanted to get with a squad of people who, one, I felt loved by their work, and so all of those brothers, from Kai to Michael to Darnell. To Michael Denzel. Now Fort. I mean, first of all, like those jokers are super. Yeah. Like they are just super. And I felt an amazing affinity for them before I read their work. And again, like I just think there's some of the few people in the world who are, to me, better people than they are writers, better people than they are academics, and better people than they are activists. And I'm honestly, like, I selfishly needed that. And what I get from them, I got after having relationships with people like Brittany and Imani, but like, and Regina Bradley, like my Southern super friends. And Regina will tell you quick, Key, I love you to death, I love man, but I connect with Brittany in a way I won't connect with you,
right, Right.
And like, again, because I'm a mushy-hearted Black boy, I want to be like, but, but I can, and she's like, no. And then I'm like, well, I connect with Darnell in ways I don't, And Brittany's like, good, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, man, like the older I get, I just realize I really appreciate, I really appreciate friendship, and I really appreciate friendship from people who are intellectually and bodily courageous. And I think all of those people, for lots of different reasons, are intellectually and bodily super, super courageous.
You just very bravely shared some narratives about abuse. And so many of us are thinking about the dozens of Black girls who have disappeared in Washington, D.C. We're processing that, one, because of the relative silence around their absences. We know what that situation looks like in other contexts where one white little girl disappears and how much energy gets generated within that. But Stacey Patton, who has an incredible book that's about to be published about Black parenting and specifically beating, she made this point today on Facebook about that if we're going to be honest about abuse on the one hand within Black communities, and be honest about these missing Black girls, that some of those Black girls are missing because of the way that we parent. That some of those Black girls are missing because of the way that abuse becomes a default in terms of how we deal with our children. What do you say to a critique like that?
I think, I guess agree. I love Stacey Patton's work, and I agree with that critique. It's interesting, right? Like a lot of the work that I'm doing, particularly in this piece, is I'm thinking about the way comedy and trauma kind of necessarily mesh in our communities. And I think when you talk about missing people, nobody laughs. We talk about missing Black girls, nobody laughs. But when we start talking about ass whoopings, like most Black folks are gonna laugh. Maybe not now in this church, but like, if I start talking about somebody getting ass whooped and like, oh, my mama pulled out an extension cord.
The shaming of that we do of Black children.
Yeah, the shaming is so real, and it's comical, and I think it's comical in a way because a lot of us, we're traumatized by that. But I don't think there's any doubt that a lot of those young girls probably ran away. But I just think we have to continue that, right? And when they ran away, I think they were treated particular ways by the folks they came in contact with because they were Black girls, in ways that Black boys wouldn't be treated, white girls, other people, you know what I mean? So I just think Stacey's narrative and the narrative that the conventional narrative can occupy the same space. For me, my mother was 19 when she had me. She was very young. Part of this book was really ultimately trying to understand some of what she went through as a person who happened to also be a mother. So I realize now that, one of the reasons my mom beat me and did other things to my body that some people might now call abusive, is because she wasn't just a mother, you know what I mean? She was a partner, she was a professor, she was a daughter, she was, she was abused by different men in many different ways. And sometimes she would come home and exercise power on the most vulnerable person that she could, and that happened to be me. And we're able to talk through into it now, but I'm also just thinking about the nuances of it, man. Like when I went to a white school, I went to black schools my entire life. In the 8th grade, I went to this white school for 1 year. A crew of us went to this white school called St. Richard's. And that year, my mama was still going through what she was going through, and she was still beating my ass, but I noticed that she was beating my ass in places that people couldn't see. Do you know what I mean? Like she wouldn't beat my ass on my arms or here, or on my neck. I would come to school when I was at black school. I'd come to school. We'd all often come to school with welts on our bodies, and we would all laugh. Oh, your mama got you this morning, blah, blah, blah. But when I went to the white school, a lot of our parents and grandparents did not want white folk to see that they were beating us. I mean, they didn't stop beating us, and they were beating us often because of the failures of the white teachers and principals and stuff. Like that's what they would say. But I just think that's heavy, man. And so I wanted to write a book about partially that. And partially some of the consequences of that, yeah, and that's what I've tried to do.
You're an artist. You have probably written every truth that you wanted to write in the way that you wanted to tell that truth. There's a lot of conversation these days about the Whitney Biennial. Mm-hmm. And the painting that depicts Emmett Till, and questions about whether or not a white artist is exploiting Black trauma in that case. I haven't quite heard that same kind of critique attached to, say, the work of my colleague Tim Tyson, but that's another conversation. That being said, part of the responses we've heard from young Black artists, one artist has, for instance, suggested that the painting should be destroyed. As an artist, even when you might disagree with a piece of art, even if you might disagree with the intent, even if you understand the kind of political economy at places like the Whitney, where some Black artists will never have the opportunity to have their work there. No doubt. What do you say to this desire to kind of police white artists from depicting examples of our trauma, right? It's get out a different film. If it's some white auteur.
No doubt. Right.
Who does it?
I completely understand folk who want to destroy that. I completely understand people who wanted to go at Simon & Schuster because of Milo. Well, I'm an artist. I'm just gonna make doper art than them. You know what I'm saying? Like that's, and I'm not trying to be like I'm a boy from Jackson, so I love to fight. But like, I'm just gonna make better art than them, and I'm gonna critique them in my art. That's how I go about it. But if somebody want to go and they want to destroy that shit, or you want to get Milo off of Simon & Schuster or whatever, or you want to get such and such out of the Whitney, I completely understand that route. Like, I completely understand that. But sometimes that is the lowest hanging fruit. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, the books that I think have done the most destruction in this culture were not written by Milo. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, the books that I think that were read by Bush and Reagan, Milo didn't write those books. Yeah. The books that I had to read in schools that told me to really look at myself and my community as less than. It told me to look at like the women in my community as absolutely less than. They weren't written by people like Milo. They were written by upstanding literary white men. So I completely understand, and I'm not gonna critique somebody else's like activism. But as an artist, I'm gonna try to make better art, and in the better art that I make, I'm gonna try to diminish that art. Yeah. That's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, I keep thinking about the fact that Charles Murray,
right,
and his bell curve was on campus 10 days ago.
Oh, they came here too?
Yeah, they came here too.
Did y'all give up?
The Duke students are civilized.
Oh. In Vermont, in Middlebury, they got a little book.
Well, the funny thing is that the president of Middlebury is a former dean here at Duke.
Oh, that says a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. I didn't know that Mississippi State had upset Connecticut until you announced it on Facebook, right? Because I was at the Earth, Wind, and Fire concert. But
priorities. Priorities.
How excited were you for Mississippi State?
These are great questions because I feel like they expose me as what I am. I am a Mississippi.
Right. I mean, we're talking about women's basketball. Ain't nobody up on Facebook and Twitter usually talking about women's basketball. So I was like,
but that team is a beast. First of all, I mean, Morgan Williams scored 41 points before to beat Baylor. She's like 5'2", which is amazing. But you know, on my analysis of all things Mississippi and black is very shallow. Like, I support them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that is, and I don't know if I should. Yeah. And there's another like amazing person in this room who posted something on Facebook. It kind of like pushed my thinking a bit, right? And this incredible fellow said, you know, why are we supporting Mississippi State when most of those players aren't from Mississippi? So immediately I'm like, let me go look at the roster, and I'm like, damn, most of them aren't from Mississippi. and then one of my friends was like, why are you supporting Mississippi State when they got that old crusty mouth white coach who like? And then I looked at, and then that dude's mouth is mad crusty. And then he did, oh my goodness, he did Morgan Williams so dirty yesterday, didn't play the whole fourth quarter. So I understand these absolutely brilliant critiques of like blanket enthusiasm, but still, if it's Mississippi and it's black, I'm for it. Like I am a supporter. But I didn't, part of that is because, I didn't go to Ole Miss, I didn't go to Mississippi State,
Right.
And I got kicked out of a school in Mississippi, and I had to leave. So I have a different relationship to the state in that way. But yeah, like my relationship to that state in terms of winning is very shallow, as is my family. Like that's what that piece is about. I mean, that piece is sort of heavy, but it's also about the way my grandmother and my mother, like any little bitty black win is a massive win for us. Be it Wheel of Fortune or $25,000 fucking pyramid and if you really think about what that really means though, it's like I remember growing up during when Clarence Thomas was coming up, and like my family was very supportive of Clarence Thomas, as were a lot of other smart black male feminists, who we both know, they're very supportive of Clarence Thomas. And as a kid, that's when I actually had like that black Mississippi support then, and but there was something about Clarence Thomas that didn't what I'm saying? Like my spidey senses were going off a little bit by the way that joker held his big ass head and and the way he was like talking greasy, and I'm like, I don't know if I support that one. And this was, and then you see Anita Hill, we saw Anita Hill, and I remember my family having this conversation about, some of my family were like, they just got the black woman out there to get him. But my grandmother was like, nah, something ain't right about that one, So I'm just saying, I'm pretty based when it comes to that, but every now and then push back a little bit and try to get smart.
You're writing these days in a very dramatic historical moment. Mm-hmm. The Trump era.
Yeah.
Do you think that's changed your writing at all, or how you think about your writing, or the value of your writing in this kind of moment? Right, because you could imagine, right, you go back to the 1960s, and whether we're talking Gwendolyn Brooks or Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez, Hakeem Abudi, Baraka, at some point, you're raising a question about whether or not the work that you do as a writer and a thinker is really in sync with folks who are putting bodies on the line.
No doubt.
Right? I mean, it's, what every, I think, black writer had to confront doing Black Lives Matter, right? What is the role of your writing when there are people who are putting their bodies on the line?
Yeah.
And in most cases, right, black women on the front lines.
No doubt, right.
Of that situation, right? How are you feeling about your writing in this moment?
Man, that's a tough question. The honest answer to that is my this is not, I'm not saying this to be funny, but like my nightmares have changed a lot, literally, I had a nightmare that I've had twice now. The other day about, we had bombed North Korea had bombed somebody else, and
damn, what kind of damn dreams you having?
I'm telling you, bro, it's weird. Because I never had those kind of dreams before. But the long story short is that I was in a city, and wherever I was in this country had also been bombed, and like there were all these kids on these 3-story buildings, and it fell and it crushed, and then one of the kids was a kid who I thought was Mexican, and he'd broken his leg, and I went to him and I was just like, is there a doctor? And then the kid was just like, no, it was obvious he was afraid that if I called a doctor, they were gonna bring him in. Do you know? I mean, it was just so obvious that my dream was being inspired by what's happening. Mm-hmm. And then I had a friend with me in the dream, and she was a lighter complected black woman, and she put her hand down next to his, and she was like, looking at me like, trust, she's pretty much like, trust me, like, come with me, I'm not gonna get you. And that is a Trump dream. Do you know what I'm saying? And I can make the argument, of course, that I should have been having those dreams before, given our empire, but I didn't have those dreams before. But the thing, there's a lot to talk about Trump and the way I think white people's mediocrity has now like bubbled to the fore in obviously obvious ways. But I also just think like it really made me just think about myself as Trump is a man. You know what I'm saying? Like Trump identifies as a man. Like I identify as a man. And so as much as I want to give whatever Trump is over to white mediocrity, in particular kinds of white masculinity, and I think that we embody masculinity in so many different ways than somebody like Trump, but there's still something, I share an identity with that man. And I think that what his presidency is encouraging me to do when I really push is to think about the ways that I have not just been complicit in structural abuse, but also like abusive. You know what I'm saying? Like that, we've elected abusers before. This is what this country does, but I don't know if we ever did it so well. In my lifetime, I don't know if we ever did it. I don't know. Every time you want to say something about Trump, there's Bill Clinton. You can't really go there. But and of course, the thing I think that is most absurd about this shit is that like everything that I think white folk have ever disciplined me for.
Right.
This man embodies it
Yep.
wholeheartedly over and over again. And I think the worst thing, and this is where I think is a shared masculinity, I think if you listen to when I listen to my favorite rappers, they have no regrets. Do you regret such and such? No. Before people get the question out, like the answer is, I don't regret. So why don't you regret? Because if I had shot that tour bus up, I wouldn't be the man I am today. But you shot the tour bus up, bruh. Somebody got hurt. Yeah, but I wouldn't be the man I am today. But you went to prison for it. Still wouldn't be the man I am today. And I just think this sort of like, no matter what happens in the past, you always say if such and such wouldn't happen, I wouldn't be who I am. That's the way that I think lots of people in this country, but particularly people who identify as men, particularly like cis men, I think we use that, right? And I think what we're saying when we do that is like, one, I don't want to change. Two, I don't give a fuck about who I hurt in the past. And that's what Trump is doing every single time. The motherfucker never says, I'm sorry, never makes a mistake. He's walking around. Anybody who loves Trump should be like, damn, I feel sorry for you. Because that dude is hurting. I'm not trying to be empathetic, but that man is hurting. You can see he's hurting. He is hurting. Sorry, he's just hurting. And I'm just saying, I think in my worst days, I see some of that and I see some of that sort of like refusal to regret in myself. I'm scared of that too.
You mentioned rappers. You go back 15 years ago to who Donald Trump is, and he's modeling for some of these rappers.
Oh, no question.
That's how you explain it. 13% of these black men who voted for him because he's in some ways, embodied an aspirational masculinity.
Right, and I'm waiting for the first boast to use Donald Trump, because right now we've been seeing a few MCs are having critical verses here and there, but just like Bush, Jay-Z, I'll George Bush the button, like Bush was a catastrophe, right? But eventually,
though he doesn't look like that now,
which is crazy,
right? You learn how to paint a little bit, and start showing a little loving eye to Michelle, and folks forget about all this shit.
That's that amnesia though, like that convenient amnesia. But I think eventually, I don't know, maybe eventually, some rapper is going to use Donald Trump as a proxy for like masculine power and a boast. It would just seem like it would be.
So in the last 10 days or so, folks have figured out that Dave Chappelle is a black comedian.
Yeah.
And black comedy is a particular kind of genre.
Right.
And you don't look to the genre of black comedy for progressive politics because it's never been that. I think about it, we go back to that Kings of Comedy. The funniest shit in the Kings of Comedy was that Bernie Mac skit about kids.
That's a good point.
And you know, he couldn't have done that in 2017, right? You know, so the genre is the genre, right? We also find out that if you might be racially woke, it doesn't mean that your politics around gender and sexuality is going to be woke too, right? Well, you know, the times have changed. Dave Chappelle has not. It is what it is, right? That being said, on the other side of that, there are folks who might see a Dave Chappelle and say 15 years ago, they might have imagined a counter to Dave Chappelle being Dr. Cosby.
Right.
And so what do we do with this interesting shift where Dr. Cosby, who never cussed, in any of his stand-up comedy, in private, was like on that Donald Trump scale?
Yeah, man, that's heavy. I mean, that's right.
And I'm thinking about this because you wrote very publicly in the early days of the Bill Cosby thing, right? When nobody was paying attention to that shit, right? Because it's not like the Bill Cosby stuff was brand new. You know, folks have known this shit for 20 years.
Yeah, I thought the Cosby, but I thought the Cosby stuff was dangerous for a number of reasons. But one, it was because, you know, the most misogynist men in the country or the most misogynist parts of the so-called feminist men in the country could look at Bill Cosby and be like, but that ain't, you know, I ain't drugging nobody. I don't know how to spell Quaalude, so, you know, that's not me. But I mean, that is a complicated question, man, because, you know, like Bill Cosby is wherever he is right now and Donald Trump is president. And if you know, I don't like to speculate about people's personal lives, but like nothing in the way Bill Cosby or Donald Trump carried themselves lead me to believe that they were not absolutely sexually abusive and violent to numbers of people in this country. And one of them was president and one of them was not. And I'm amazingly critical of Bill Cosby. But the bigger problem is, and I do see, I mean, I think the problem was for a lot of our generation, the most cutting edge, sophisticated racial politic was Chappelle. Like we thought Chappelle, I mean, it's the same for like when I was growing up with like Richard Pryor. But the problem is, you see the problem in Chappelle that you see in a number of our wonderful novelists and essayists, like these motherfuckers just never read a black feminist sentence. You know what I'm saying? They just never read a black book they never read a book by a black woman. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? And what's interesting is that if we think about how people want to be like, oh, people, and we're trying to be very opaque about it, like Tom just passed Dave Chappelle on. Tom didn't pass that motherfucker on. You remember how skinny he was? You see how fucking like brolic he is now? Like Tom, like you don't get that brolic overnight. Like he lifted a lot of weight. But what if he would have been reading black women all that time? You know what I'm saying? It's the truth. But the problem is you see the same shit in some of our wonderful essayists and novelists. Motherfuckers writing books as if like no black woman has written anything in the last 15 to 20 to 30, 40 years. And those books, if I keep going, I'm gonna sound like a hater. So let me just say, I just think one of the problems is I was talking to my kids the other day, it's like not only do we not invest in like black women's art, literary art, we don't listen, you know, a lot of our boys and men, people who identify as boys and men don't really listen to fucking music. You know, we don't, and I got students who always want to talk about strip clubs and shit, and like, but they won't ever go see like a woman dancing like a stripper but singing. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're moving your mouth, they don't want to go to that shit. But if you can just go up there and dance, they want to attend it. So anyway, I'm gonna get off a soapbox, but I'm just trying to say that I think a big problem is there's a lot of incredible foundation shaping work being created by particularly people who identify as black women, and a lot of our most daring political black male artists aren't reading that stuff.
I remember the earliest days of the Crunk Feminist Collective and when Moya Bailey was still involved and when David Banner, you know, testified in front of the House about, you know, the dangers of hip hop, right? And, you know, his racial politics were tight, right? But then when it came around to the gender piece, and so they, you know, were talking about delivering to him a black feminist care package.
Right.
Right. Just, 10 books. David, we know you read and we heard about this master's degree, right? So we know you got some intellect behind that. How about you read some of these books, right? But, even that gets back to the piece, we were just talking about with the Whitney Biennial. The kind of energy that we choose to give to stuff, right? I was talking to my friend Lisa Thompson, right? Playwright, teaches at University of Texas. There's a black woman who has a play on Broadway right now, Lynn Nottage, Sweat. And if we could get half the energy that we're giving to all this negative shit.
No shit, that's true.
Right,
that's
to just, put up in the air folks who are doing work in our name that are of value, right? I mean, we would have, incredible changes just in that context.
No question. No question. And even more profoundly, I think a lot of this work, like Sweat and everybody in the Crunk Feminist Collective, like these are I think these are artists. These are artists who are creating and producing a particular kind of love for us, often in spite of us.
Right.
And by us, I'm talking about cis black men. It's not reciprocated. It's not reciprocated at all. And I'm not at all trying to, when I say this, I'm not trying to make black women static or act like I know black women, but what I do know is what it feels like to be forgiven by black women for shit I should not be forgiven. I do know that, you know what I mean? And then my man David Banner, like this is what I'm saying, the Mississippi stuff gets complicated. I wanna big up Banner, and I've been on a number of panels with Banner, and I appreciate a lot of what he did, particularly around Katrina.
Right.
But like my brother thinks feminism is talking about queens and shit, like the queens, like, and if they're queens, like we must be kings. But I don't understand, why do you want, like, I don't need to be a king or queen.
That stripper pole is a slippery slope.
Is that
right?
What it
You're
is?
either gonna be Queen Mama Zulu up here, right? Or you're gonna be the stripper at the bottom of the pole, right? There's no black woman, that folks that some men recognize as just being black women, right? Got to be this pole, this pole, either up there or down here.
Yeah, and I know it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous for our relationships, and ultimately I think it's dangerous for the way we interact with ourselves. So I don't really buy into that kings and queens stuff. But the problem with me is that I don't like to fly. So like I've never been to the continent. Maybe we all are kings and queens over there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got one stamp in my passport. I don't know.
This a no hotep zone.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, but that's my thing. Even with Stacey, Stacey is like, at our origin, like the white people like invented beating and shit. Like, I don't care who invented beating.
Right.
Like,
we just need to stop doing it.
I don't give a fuck if they invented beating or not. Like, I don't think we need to beat our children.
What's the last book you read, and your immediate response as you're reading it was, oh shit?
There's this book coming out called Electric Arches by Eve Ewing, and I was lucky enough to blurb it. It's a poetry book, but I have never in my life read anything like it. And when I say that, I'm saying like the 6-year-old in me was as stimulated as like the 75-year-old dude who like wants to act like I'm reading the New Yorker cross-legged. Like the part of me that is hyper literary and really wants to push like illustrations to the side was as stimulated as the part of me that like really needs illustrations. Like she's writing about Yazoo City, Mississippi, parts of Chicago, Cambridge in ways that all three of them feel home in the same text. So that was the last book I read that made me just feel like, fuck, like how could she do that? And I like reading books that make me want to not write, like make me feel like, I don't know if you ever feel this way, but make me feel like, fuck, man, I can't do it, like.
I'm gonna tell you, and I've told Jelani this many times, reading Jelani Cobb. Yeah. Every time I read Jelani Cobb, and especially now that we get to read him on a regular basis up in New York, every time I read Jelani, I'm like, damn, I gotta go back to the chair, right? And he's, there are those writers, right, that just, make you think that way. It's like, I need to go back and work on this craft a little bit.
Yeah. Samantha Irby too. She wrote this book a few years ago called Meaty, but she has a book of essays coming out, and just in terms of form, I'm just a big form person. It's just something I've never seen before. In terms of form. You
flying halfway across the country. First of all, are you Beats or Bose?
I'm driving.
So you don't fly.
I mean, honestly, I will fly if the check is very good. I mean, I appreciate people bringing me here, you know what I'm saying? But like, if the check is stupendous, I will fly. And if my schedule, like, but I'm driving usually. So I drove from Mississippi. I guess I got here yesterday. I'm driving back to Mississippi right after this.
What the fuck?
So in my car, I mean, there's Bose speakers in my car. I don't want to fuck with Beats, man. I think Beats are crazy. I think it's crazy that we buy Beats.
I got them quiet 35 shits Bose.
So
okay, I'm with you on that.
Like, I think it's crazy that Dre made a fucking living beating women's asses, rhyming about beating women's asses, and then make some headphones called Beats.
That are inferior product, but that's a whole other conversation.
And we buy them. So anyway.
What are you listening to then as you're driving back to Mississippi tomorrow?
Man, you know, tonight, that.
And don't tell me you be listening to like books on audio.
Nah, I don't. I don't listen to books on audio. You know what I listened to the whole way up was I really listened to that new Drake album. Because it's it's like a 10, 11 hour drive. And so I really, because I wanted to see if he was doing anything different. I listened to the Kendrick song that he put out, Heart 4, not I haven't listened to Humble yet because I just don't want to listen to that yet after all the stuff I've read. But I will listen to it at some point. And
so I can't ask you about that.
About Humble?
About Humble, I can't ask you.
I mean, you can ask me, but like I haven't. Yeah, I haven't listened to it, so I'm gonna sound stupid. But I also listened to this. There's this woman named Helona King. She went to Vassar. You didn't overlap with her. And it's a song called "Monsters in the Night." It's my favorite song. Like I listen to that over and over again. I wrote up. Yeah. So I listen to all, and I listen to a little Mahalia Jackson when I start to get, when I need to really stay awake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trouble in the World.
Yeah. Yeah, How I Got Over, man. That mug is the long version of How I Got
Over. Yeah.
Yes. But mainly, I listen to Drake on the way up here to see, because my kid, like the thing is, Regina Bradley. I had a conversation with her the other day. You posted it, and one of the things that she said is that I told her that a lot of this new stuff that these kids are listening to, I'm feeling finally like I'm maybe aging out of hip hop because I'm like, I don't really feel it. And then she was like, if you love your students, particularly like your young black Southern students, you can't just dismiss the art. You have to really listen to it. And she was right, So, and like when I went to the high school today, all the kids kept talking about was Kodak Black and Migos. And I don't really listen to either of them, but I need to.
I got a 14-year-old daughter.
Oh, boy.
Unfortunately, I know who Day Day and Lil Yachty.
You know all that?
And I'm gonna be honest, right?
Yeah.
Once you get past some of the lyrics, I'm like, okay, I can drive
for
for half
real?
an hour to this shit.
Okay.
At least in terms of the production.
Right.
I don't really know what they're saying.
You know what they're saying. Right.
But I think the peoples want to get at you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you for your talk, both of you. I find it very delightful. My question is kind of looking at your approach to like reportage with like your family. I write nonfiction, and like a big part of what I do is like turning the family history and like with like mental illness and just topics that I don't know are kind of stigmatized, especially in Black communities. And so one thing that I think about as a writer is like disclosing information while also being respectful of your family and their privacy. And so I guess I would like to hear more about your thoughts surrounding how you're sharing the information and thinking about how you construct different audiences. So you say the insertion of you is like your mom, but also understanding that different people are reading the work.
Absolutely. That's a great question. So with this project, again, I interviewed my mother for, tons of
hours, and I interviewed my grandmother. And my grandmother is, she signed off on everything, right? She's like, everything that we talked about is fine going in the book. And there's an arc in the book where, I talked to my grandmother about this day when I tried to write to her about some of what was happening at home and ultimately I come back to her about that, and we talk about not what was just what was happening to me, but what was happening to her in her own bedroom and different places. And my grandmother has signed off on everything being in the book. I talked to my mother about a lot of things, and we have it on tape, but my mother's not okay with a lot of stuff being in the book. And so, you know, that's just been something we've been I'm trying to work on as a writer. Like I want my mother to sign off on it. There's some things that it doesn't, I mean, legally she doesn't have to sign off on some things because I can always say it's my memory, but I don't want to write, you know, I don't want that book. I want her to be okay with what I'm putting out. But the flip side is that I'm also talking in this book about, I interviewed some other people in my life who were either survivors of sexual abuse or perpetrators that I saw or heard. And luckily for the book, like all of them were okay with the way that I wrote it. So my mother is not okay completely with the way that I wrote the book. And that's I mean, I don't even know if I can say any more than that. I'm trying. I don't know. It's tough right now because, yeah. So she's not okay with. But my mother, you know, I wrote this essay about my mom pulling a gun on me, and she pulled a gun on me because she told me to type an application. I got kicked out of school, and I was like, I'm just gonna handwrite the application. And she was like, you gonna type the application? I'm like, no, I'm gonna handwrite the application. My mom like, you gonna type that application? And then she went and got that gun. She was like, you gonna type the application? And so I typed the application. And I don't say my mother's name in that essay, but my mom was like, you can't put that out because I have a job. You know, but you know, and if you read that essay, I'm trying to talk about like some of the things that might have led her to doing that. And I'm not critiquing her for doing that. And I don't say her name at all. But also, that was like the third time my mama pulled a gun on me. But and in the essay, you know, it's like, I write it as if like this was just a strange occurrence, you know what I'm saying? But I love my mama, and she has every right to be, to have her story told the way she wants to tell it. I'm just trying to figure out how to do that right now. That's one of the reasons the book ain't come out yet, because we have to tinker with some stuff. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Good evening, and thank you for your courage, and thank you for this opportunity for us to learn and to share. I'm curious to know, in talking about or thinking about abuse in families, historical traumas, and so it's present in mine, I'm sure it's present in many of ours, but we don't talk about it. Right. There's no language to talk about it. There's no space to talk about it. And then I see my nieces who are 16 and 15, and I know something's up.
Right.
I know something's up.
Right.
But I don't know, reaching out to social services, which I've done on occasion, because I'm just at a loss.
Right.
And that met with mad resistance and had to work my way back in. You know, I don't know what to do. There is something going on. There's something going on this way, and there's something going on generationally. And so, it has to stop in my family and in our communities.
Yes. Well, I just want to thank you for sharing that with us, and I just want to say, I can't encourage you to talk to your nieces any differently or her parents any differently, but I do think if you think it is generational, I think you might want to model talking about the violence separate from them in some way with the other generations, right? With your elders or, you know, your peers or something like that. You know, and this book ultimately is about the way my family finds intense pleasure in talking about white supremacy. Like that chapter, my grandmother, my mother, like we can talk about whiteness and anti-blackness in very profound ways, like up and down, and we can, you know, make jokes about it and whatnot. But when it comes to time to talk about like sexual violence, we weren't able to do it. And this book enabled us to do that. You know, one of the things that happens in this book is we all sit around a table and we're talking about, and I don't, but the hard part is like, I don't think that like talking about it is a deliverance. It's talking about it that day. And I think that's the hardest thing for like us as people who grew up in a missionary Southern Black Baptist church, you know, like people believe in deliverance. So we believe we talk about it, we ain't gotta talk about it no more. And I don't think it works that way, you know? So we talked about it for like a weekend, and then, you know, people didn't want to talk about it, anything else. People wanted to talk about weight gain and shit instead of talking about what was at the root of weight gain. Or people wanted to talk about weight loss instead of what was really at the root of weight loss. And in my family, like, there's a lot of violence and sexual trauma that's at the root of like massive amounts of weight gain and massive amounts of weight loss. All I'm saying is, like, I hope you all commit to having that initial familial conversation and ritualizing that conversation, because that's all I can say has sort of possibly maybe incrementally worked for my family. Hi.
We'll take this one last question.
Thank you so much for all of this. I really loved your writing on being a Black professor, especially at Vassar. And I have just found it so incredibly revealing about how universities work and how people have such different experiences, just having different bodies on campuses. So I want to thank you for that, but I also want to ask you what it's been like to move back to Mississippi, and if working with different students has been a great difference, and if that's changed your teaching or how you go about your...
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that. When I left Mississippi, I always wanted to come back, but I was talking to people yesterday about this, but I wanted to come back with, honestly, I wanted to come back with a little bit of money, and I wanted to come back with a little bit of like influence. I wanted to come back with a little bit of power, because I know how Mississippi treats people with my demeanor, and that demeanor is sort of contentious. So I needed to have a little bit with me when I came back. So I'm back in my state, and you know, I wasn't gonna come back to my state unless my state made it worth my while. So, you know, like, they made me a full endowed chair professor, and they gave me a house, and but I still ain't give up my job at Vassar. Like, I still got my job at Vassar because, you know, my grandmama said white folk might be white folk tomorrow, you know, like, that's what my grandmother says, you know what I'm saying? Meaning that if I do the wrong thing tomorrow, they might try to turn Mississippi on me right quick, and I need to, I mean, I think I can get another job in a few months, but I need that check like immediately, you know? So I honestly have my job. But you know, wonderful thing about teaching in Mississippi is that I love my students at Vassar. And I think my early years as a professor, I think I loved teaching them too much. Like, I think I was too involved. Like, whatever, like, because I got kicked out of school, like, whatever they needed, I wanted to provide. You know what I'm saying? Whether it was rides somewhere, or money, or extra time on such and such, or like anything they wanted, I wanted to provide it. I don't think that's healthy. I know that now. I didn't know it at the time. The difference between my students at Vassar and Ole Miss and University of Mississippi is, like, first of all, 80% of my kids in my classes work. You know, they're afraid to ask for anything. They're afraid to ask for any sort of extension, and I mean, honestly, like, I think they're just as brilliant on the whole as my kids at Vassar, but they don't expect as much, and I don't know if that's good or bad. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have kids at Vassar asking me for like all sorts of shit, you know? Like, some of my kids, I don't smoke weed, right? Some of my kids at Vassar thought I smoked weed. Some of them would be in there, we'd be talking about Baldwin or something, they'd be like, "What's up?" You know, like, "You got something?" You know, like, "No, I don't have any weed for you, student." You know what I'm saying? That really happened, you know? Or like, you know, yeah, like, "Can I use your car this weekend?" You know, I'm like, "No, you can't use my car." But actually, I'd be like, "What do you need it for?" Maybe, you know? And at Ole Miss, the wonderful thing is, like, they work. I don't want to, I mean, kids are different, but so far, kids are trying to do their work. They're very deferential, which is weird. You know, they call me sir and stuff like that. They call me Professor Lehman. And they're a number of first generation kids. But the illest thing is that they work, meaning, like, you know, if I go to the car wash, I see sometimes they're working at the car wash. I go to, you know, I might go to Chick-fil-A to get those waffle fries. They'd be like, "Hey, kid," you know, like, they work. And at Vassar, I don't know why, a lot of my kids didn't work. And then they would try to do these GoFundMes and shit where they were like, "It's so hard to be a black kid from Missouri. Can you GoFundMe?" And like, the part of me wants to be like, something about that seems right, but something about that seems so odd now that I'm in Mississippi and I see that like kids would never. You know what I'm saying? I'm home in my state, but like Oxford is not Jackson. And my dream is to like one day get my money right enough to where I can be in Jackson and still take care of my family. Hopefully doing something at Jackson State. Right now I can't take care of my family the way I think I need to and work in Jackson, but hopefully one day I will be able to. Thank you for that. And I think that's it. So thank y'all so much for coming out tonight, and thank you, Bill. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Produced by Duke University, online at duke.edu.